outlet.
Hello, I'm Boris from Mulderville. Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Boris. Hello.
Hello. Your original story was published over 20 years ago. What made now the right time for a film adaptation of Abraham's Boys?
Oh, I don't know, that there was anything particular about the moment. You know, Dracula is always re-emerging from his coffin to scare another generation. Every generation gets its own king vampire. We've had the Robert Eggers Nosferatu picture, which
Mhm.
was so chilling and so powerful and so unique, so there's never really been a vampire film like it. Um, and I think it's natural for each generation to want to have its own exploration of those classic characters, not just Dracula, but Mina and Van Helsing, and that world. And certainly when I wrote this story 20 years ago, it was a whole different period of vampire film. It was, Coppola's Coppola's Dracula and
Mhm.
Hugh Jackman and Van Helsing. So, these things go through cycles. It's very normal.
This is not a typical vampire tale. It's more about inherent fear. What theme did you hope would carry over into Natasha Kermani film?
So I became interested, when I decided I was going to write a story about Van Helsing, I
Mhm.
became interested in, what would it be like if this guy was your father? Think about how strange that would be because Van Helsing goes out at night and he tears the lid off a coffin, and there'll be a young woman sleeping inside, and he takes a hammer and a stake to her heart and then chops off her head and then stuffs a bulb of garlic in her screaming mouth. And that's his Friday night. That's not a normal Friday night. And we've been told, we think that Van Helsing is one of the good guys, right? The vampires are the bad guys. The vampires are evil and sick and infected. They prey on us. So it's right and proper to destroy them. That's what we think. But when you also consider the way Abraham Van Helsing spends his time, he actually sounds a lot like Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
This is how Ted Bundy spent his Friday nights. And probably Ted Bundy told himself they have to die. Just
The
like
film
Van
play,
Helsing. When you think that
yeah,
way, it's pretty chilling.
nice. The film plays with the ambiguity of Van Helsing paranoia. Did you and Natasha discuss how far to push the tension between belief and delusion?
No, Natasha knew what she was doing when she went into it. I think that she only had a short time to make the film, and she didn't have a huge budget. And she used her limitations as strengths. She let those become strengths in terms of making the film. And so she wound up making a picture that's very tightly contained, almost suffocating, almost claustrophobic, even though you have this huge California landscape to look upon. It still feels like we're confined. It's very suffocating. It's got this kind of hand on the throat suspense. And to me, that's pure Hitchcock. To me, that's Psycho. That's Vertigo. That's Rear Window. Actually, Rear Window and Psycho are really good points of comparison because they're both set in single locations. We're trapped in the Bates Motel, or we're trapped in there in Jimmy Stewart's apartment in Rear Window. So in some ways, Abraham's Boys is not like a modern picture at all. It's playing its own game. It's a film that aims to be the kind of picture that Hitchcock might have made. It has that feel. It also feels a little bit like a John Ford Western. There are these shots of Brady Hepner standing outside, and he's in his hat and his overalls, and he's got the hatchet in one hand, and the sun is setting over rattlesnake country. And you look at that and you think, Western. It looks like an early Clint Eastwood picture. So I sort of love that. I sort of love that she almost, you know, Natasha almost totally dismissed modern film. Eggers did the same with Nosferatu. Natasha almost totally shrugged off all the conventions of modern film and decided to make something, you know, to aim for something more classic and timeless. And I love that. You know, I think that's kind of thrilling.
And my last question, how do you feel about the Titus Welliver's portrayal of your version of Van Helsing?
Extraordinary. I can't believe how lucky we were to have him. There's a moment in the last, late in the picture, there's a moment with Titus where he does something emotionally that's so chilling and so shocking that I don't think anyone who sees the picture will ever forget it. And that's just great acting, you know, just extraordinary acting. So we lucked out when he agreed to do the picture for sure.
Thank you, Joe. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Boris, it's terrific talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.